Hello?
Baron, how are you doing?
Who am I talking to?
You're talking to
Hey!
Alexander Emmert.
Yes, Alexander.
How are you this
Can you
evening?
hear me? Oh, I'm fine. Yourself?
I'm doing well, thanks. Got a glass of red wine in my hand, feeling very Poe-like.
Oh, that's good. That's good. Yes, I had a bottle of red the other night, and unfortunately I didn't have anything left. So I'm.
Oh, well, you know, that tends to happen, especially if you're enjoying it.
Yes, I did enjoy the entire bottle. I did.
Good for you. There's a man who lives with some panache.
Yes, I like my Merlots, and I drink them like they're the nectar of the gods.
Absolutely.
So,
Merlot's a good, deep, soulful red. Got to love it.
Oh, yes. Yes, it is. Wow. So could you tell us what film that you are trying to get made?
All right. Well, in my first foray into horror, really, I'm doing an adaptation of Edgar Allan Poe's Ligeia, which is a novella that came out in 1839.
Okay. Now, why did you pick that particular Poe story as opposed to, House of Usher or so many of the others that have been made?
Well, the versions that have been made of most Poe, and Poe is mostly known for his tales, which are rather short stories, really. And many of the adaptations that have been made beforehand have been extended. The narrative has been extended into into feature-length films. Certainly the Hammer type films, films starring Vincent Price. Are all things that were very influential on me and all things that I adored. But as I grew a little bit older and started reading more Poe, I noticed that the narrative was somewhat different. They had changed it really to accommodate what they wanted a running time to be rather than the story itself. So I was determined to make this only Poe's words. So therefore, it's basically the narrator narrating the story for you to the images that we will be presenting, and that's why I wanted to do Ligeia, which gave me the most visceral impact, I think, when I read any of the Poe tales, and it brought forth a lot of imagery into my mind, and we want to represent that upon the screen.
So I'm curious, with so many horror authors out there, what attracted you to Poe's style to begin with? I mean, why did you pick up, say, a Poe book instead of maybe something else?
Well, Poe's incredibly descriptive, and what he's able to elicit from his reader, or at least this particular reader, with his words, is just absolutely fantastical, horrific, and really sort of elicits a feeling of wonder and also like one of just complete dread. Anyone who's read, I guess a good example would be, like, say, The Cask of Amontillado, is absolutely terrified of being walled up alive once they put that story down. And indeed I was. Ligeia is obviously a very sort of different tale. It really deals with love that persists beyond death and then sort of a reincarnation in the form of possession. And that was really interesting, metaphysical, and just, really mind-blowing the first time I read it. I read it really young, and upon my next read, which was in my teenage years, I felt the aspect of love more and more. And that was, the romance was a different level of poignancy to the story, beyond the horror that I originally felt. And then, after becoming a fairly well-educated young man in my collegiate years, I read it yet again and was just blown away by really how much depth there was in the story about the characterizations, really the human condition, and also the overwhelming feeling of mortality and of the supernatural horror that Poe was able to elicit from me. And it was really something that I had thought about doing probably for about the last 7 years, and started talking to a friend of mine in earnest about it, Jeff Baxter, who's an Emmy-winning effects artist, about 4 years ago. And really, because of all of the things that we had been doing in our careers up to that point. We couldn't get to it until now, and because it's going to be only Poe's words as Poe meant them, and not extended into a feature-length narrative, it became something that was beyond our sort of traditional context to fund. So we decided to turn to Poe's fans, to fellow fans of the author, and really Indiegogo, crowdsourcing, that particular way in order to not only, create an audience that was already there and loved Poe, but participants who would help us along our journey.
Okay. I mean, it really does sound like you have a true love affair with with Poe's art and his words, and I really do share that also.
Fantastic.
Can you tell me about any of your, Can you tell me about any of your cast? I think you have two pretty good actresses that are involved in your project.
Yes, indeed. There's Kristen DeLuca, who's most recently probably been seen by horror fans in Deadline, a Chris Tessara film. Victoria Gates, who's just been in Sea of Tranquility, which is an award-winning short film, been doing the festival circuit quite a lot. Both are friends of mine, and both had really the same affinity towards Poe when I described to them what I wanted to do with it, as I felt in wanting to do it, and they became really sort of natural choices to be involved.
Okay. I did have this one question. I saw the promo online. Why did you do it, say, in a cemetery as opposed maybe doing it at Poe's house in Philadelphia?
Well, there are two reasons for that. One, the cemetery is really sort of the ambiance that pervades the entire piece. Life, and you can see the trees all around, and the fact that we're moving in them and speaking in them. The trees are there, but also the tombs, the mausolea, and the juxtaposition of life and death I felt was very important. In as much as Poe's house is concerned, I'd love to not only be inside or outside, the building, but film in it for the piece itself. But in as far as like outdoors and really capturing the natural light and doing the things that we did fairly quickly on the fly in the promo piece, it's on 7th and Spring Garden in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, and Philadelphia is the 5th largest city in the country. So there was a lot of ambient noise that would have been really difficult to really tamp down. There's an elevated train nearby. It's on a very busy street, and I'm sure several people would have wanted to, shall we say, participate in the shoot. So we decided to relegate ourselves to the cemetery.
Yeah, that is a very political way of putting that. Many people want to join your production in that area.
Well, we like the enthusiasm, but several people climbing on top of me and perhaps the statue of the Raven outside of the house might not have made the best picture.
No. What you did show, trying to convey this to the audience who has not seen it yet, is very it's eerie, and yet it's still the way you spoke about the film really just pulled me in. It really did. How long did it take you to come up with that concept to do that narrative?
Do you mean the narrative that's exhibited in the promo piece, or why I chose to do it just through Poe's text and words?
Actually, both.
Oh, okay. Well, I will then answer them both respectively in that order. In describing what I wanted to do with the narrative there, for the very reasons that I had just told you, I wanted to be in cemeteries and sort of convey not only the light of the sun and how it moves through the grass and the trees. Cemeteries are, of course, a very very pleasant, very peaceful type of setting, but also what they meant. The tombs behind us, the interment of bodies, the migration of our physical forms into that of the spirit, which is really inherent in the story. So, there was that juxtaposition that I wanted to express in the promo film. In staying with Poe's narrative, I just felt it was a very important thing to do, because though I really enjoyed the earlier versions of all the tales you mentioned. I mean, I think you talked about the House of Usher. Obviously, Price did a version of Mask of Red Death, and then a version of Ligeia that was called The Tomb of Ligeia as well. All really excellent films, and really expressive narrative that conveyed Poe, but conveyed Poe in sort of a different way, because they had to sort of stretch and extend the stories, add characters, do all these other things. The most recent version of Ligeia that was made by Wes Bentley a few years ago, and that reset the story in the modern age, not in the early 19th century in which it took place. So really, more than anything, being a lover of Poe and having Poe, being such a part of my literary background and really my life and of my exposure to the horror film, but also horror literature, I really wanted to stay as true to him as I possibly could. So that's why I'm just going to use his text, nothing but. But we'll also include the poem The Conqueror Worm, which only appears in later publications of Ligeia.
Oh, well, that's a nice treat.
It was really important for me to add that. Once again, as a reference to Vincent Price, The Conqueror Worm was the name of a film that Price starred in, I think in the early 70s, which was then basically retitled The Witchfinder General. And it was about witch persecution in basically Cromwell's England. But interestingly enough, though it was written several hundred years after the events of that film, he used not only that title but also the poem itself in the narrative of the film, which I thought was really interesting, and that was kind of a tip of the hat from Vincent Price to Edgar Allan Poe. So I felt that would be perfect to use in our version of Ligeia as well. The first time that it was published, 1839, it did not include the poem, which is part of the narrative in Poe's original longer version. But when it was published in a later version, I believe the year directly after Poe's death, 1850, it included The Conqueror Worm, which is basically about the inevitability of death. I'll read you the last lines of it. I've actually got it here in front of me.
Yes, please do.
The poem really takes place in a theater where someone is seeing what is kind of a metaphorical representation of life leading to its end. And the last lines are as follows. Out are the lights, out all. And over each quivering form, the curtain, a funeral pall, comes down with the rush of the storm, while the angels, all pallid and wan, uprising, unveiling, affirm that the play is the tragedy, man, and its hero, the conqueror worm. That is, death conquers all.
Okay. I got here.
You've got to dig it, man. It's Poe.
Okay. I just want to mention I got a direct message here on Twitter.
Okay.
Here, if I can understand, the person is trying to tell me here in less than 140 characters. They're using the text language of I don't know what language now. Let's see. They would like to know, basically, how would this film translate to people who have yet to read a lot of Poe?
I think that they would be very compelled by what it meant visually. Because I'm conveying mostly Poe's words, which is fairly antiquated language for some viewers. I really want to represent in the most clear yet fantastical way possible what I was trying to say, and so there will be a lot of there will be a lot of effects, aging, death, reincarnation, the change of seasons, storms entering the sky, leaves falling from the trees, things like that, which Poe's descriptive language will have very much translated to the reader, but we mean to sort of accent it, underscore it, maybe emphasize it even further with the imagery.
Okay. Just want to also mention to our fans out there, if someone wants to call in to ask a question, the number here is 516-418-5743. I always like to throw that out to people. They seem to get confused when they get to the site and can't find the number. I don't know how they do it, but they do it. I am curious, though. You're, on your crowdfunder, you're asking for quite a bit of money. What happens if you do not achieve the fully funded amount that you're seeking?
Well, actually, first and foremost, we noticed that there was a misprint and there was a 1 before the 5-7. And so we're actually only looking for $57,000, not $157,000.
Okay.
Yeah, we've just taken that up with Indiegogo. One of their people wrote to us, and they're like, "We don't think that's actually what you meant." And I was like, "Indeed, thank you for asking, because it's not." So yes, that's a different figure altogether. And we know that through crowdfunding, it's difficult to even raise, like $20,000, to get something done. So I want to reassure everyone who thinks that we're going to fall far short that we're not looking for quite that much. That's a misprint.
Okay. As you probably heard tonight, as I said, the 157, because that's what the site showed.
Right.
So hopefully they have that corrected soon.
Yeah, I believe in the text of our description of the project itself, it has the correct figure 157, or excuse me 57, but it shows on the top 157, which is the of course the incorrect figure. How the 1 got in there, not totally sure, but we're onto it.
Okay, because as you heard me just say, and I said it tonight, 157. There's no way. Between the days you have left and how much you have, I'm looking, I go, unless he's got to raise Poe from the dead, I don't think it's happening.
Well, Poe died penniless, so that wouldn't help me at all.
Yeah, well, you never know. I'm curious, will you be having any, do you make any, obviously you're making it quite literally to what Poe wrote.
Mm-hmm.
Are you going to expand a little, or you're just going to truly stay dedicated to the word of Poe?
Well, we'll stay with his precise text, but we will have images that, sort of branch the different parts of the story together. And so, I mean, the piece itself will be, longer than say 18 pages of what the story says. In fact, to get to the 3rd page of Poe's story, I've got about 9.5 pages of script. Just to get the narrator and Ligeia really meeting one another, and that's really putting in the imagery which leads to the narrative that shows these people's lives really coming together and what's in their minds and what makes Ligeia, the woman herself who captures this man's imagination, such an incredibly extraordinary and amazing creature, and a woman like no other.
Now, you stated this is your first horror film. Is that correct?
This is my first horror film. Yes, I am most known for historical films and also thrillers.
Okay.
And it being Edgar Allan Poe, and the time frames in which he wrote, and also the psychology which is conveyed really in all of his pieces. In retrospect, I kind of think that moving into horror, and especially into Poe, who influenced me so deeply, it's kind of a natural evolution of everything I had been doing before. So I have many ideas past this one. I plan to stay in horror for a bit because I rather like it.
Why is that?
It deals with things that are so fantastical and beyond the ordinary, but which a human being has to interpret and convey. I mean, your characters have to be as real as anything in any other film. You have to care about them. You have to understand what they're thinking and why they're thinking it. It allows me, I think, to do everything that was seminal to the psychological thrillers that I had been writing, and really things about historical figures that I'd written too, getting into their brains, their motivations. and things like that, and putting them in a context which is just really extraordinary and mind-boggling, a horrific situation, one in which there's a supernatural element, one in which there's, perhaps a demonic element, one perhaps, who knows, further down the line, maybe I'll add an alien element to something that I do. I've thought about it, and one of the great things about horror is that it opens up all of those possibilities to you.
Would you agree that the horror genre itself actually encompasses the other genres, such that in a horror film, typically we have elements of drama, a little light comedy thrown in, and even a touch of romance?
I would absolutely agree with that. I see those things being inherent in most horror films that I've borne witness to, and I kind of feel like what it's doing in my newer attraction to horror as a writer, producer, director. What it's doing is really allowing me to add all of those things that were attractive about other contexts before, and incorporating them into one genre, which, as you've just said, very sagely so, really encompasses all of the others. Okay.
And got my eyes here drifted for a moment. I have another direct message in. I don't know why people are direct messaging, but okay. This question is obviously for you. They are mentioning the photos they've seen on Facebook about the romantic kissing scene. You want to allude to that one?
The romantic kissing scene. Well, that's just, let's see, this from a photo shoot that was done, myself and a model, Irina Michelle. Very interestingly, that's been conveyed as something that's very representative of the romance aspect of our film, and indeed was something Ligeia and this absolutely, completely obsessive, all-encompassing love was something I was thinking of during the shoot. So it was something that, I felt really, the Poe itself really informed, that particular photo shoot. And we're going to mimic things along those lines, shall we say, during the making of our film.
Okay. All right. I hope that answers that person's question. I don't usually read off their Twitter names because some of them are very bizarre. I get those kind of. I get names. I don't know how that got through the censor board, probably out there in Twitter world, but I'm not reading that name. Sorry.
Okay. Right. Well, handles are very personal, and I'm sure it means a lot to the author of that tweet.
Yes, but some of them you wonder sometimes of just how revealing they're trying to make their name. Some of them would entice certain authorities to come after them for their names.
Interesting.
Yeah. Whole entire movie right there about Twitter world and some of the names that people choose. Well, we're just about out of time for you to be on BaronsCrypt here. Could you just give us a final shout out here of where people can go to find out about the film, Facebook, your crowdfunding sites, and of course, once again, the correct amount that you're seeking?
Yes, of course, and thank you for mentioning all of that. We are on Facebook, Ligeia the Film, facebook.com, Ligeia the Film, or you can just look it up under Ligeia, and you'll see a lovely poster done by Mallory Holloway and Shay McJagger, which bears Kristen DeLuca's likeness as Ligeia. Also, you may find us on Twitter at Ligeia the Film, literally at Ligeia the Film, and our Indiegogo site is igg.me/Ligeia the Film.
Okay.
And the correct amount of what we're looking for to make this film is $57,000. It is not $157,000, which is what is represented right now on Indiegogo. But as I had said, Indiegogo and my production team are in contact about that. And usually you're not to be able to change many things on Indiegogo, but the discrepancy has been noted, and we're all on it. So.
Okay. All right, Alexander. I think it was great having you on the show. I thank you for
Thank you
calling
very
in.
much for having me, Baron. I really appreciate it, and it was lovely. It was lovely being on the show. Christine Weiss, our assistant producer, I guess got us together, and she's running all of the social media for this particular project, and we're really lucky to have her. She manages a lot of conversation online. Quite a bit of chatter, quite a bit of email, and we're really lucky that she's managing this because I've got to keep my head in the film. And my friend, thank you very much for having us on your show. I really enjoyed being here with you.
And please pass along to Christine that she did a fantastic job setting up your interview. She did try to muscle out a couple of the questions I was going to ask you, and I guess you told her, sure. I gave them something away, and I'll let people know this. Sure. First question: introduce yourself. Sorry, the rest of the questions remain secret until showtime.
Well, that's the way it should be. You're a good journalist, and so you ask what you think is seminal without revealing too much and influencing your subject, and that's a great thing. Okay.
Well, I hope you had a good time on the show. And if your project does get fully funded, I definitely welcome you back to the crypt to tell everybody about it.
We will absolutely not only shout out the show itself, but we would love to come back and talk to you about when we are in production with the piece.
Oh, sure, not a problem. I greatly welcome that.
Well, great. Thanks so much, Baron.
All right, thank you. You have a good night.
All right, you have a wonderful night. We'll be listening after.
All right, thank you. Bye.
Cheers.
All right, folks. That was Alexander talking about Ligeia. That, I think, was one of my most favorite ones so far doing this show. I am a real true fan of Poe. People who have had the privilege of coming to my office here and seeing the books I have on Poe actually probably swear I have some sort of love fest with the guy, but it's really his words and how he conveys a lot of what he does with his Gothic style of then still is immensely popular to today. I think there's authors today who try to mirror that sense, and some get bogged down in details that are not that important and don't seem able to really bring the Gothic sense to life. If I had to pick maybe two authors or such that can convey that sense, that would have been probably Poppy Z. Bright and maybe Anne Rice even. But I think the main point here is Poe's work, I think, will always transcend the generations. I don't see his work being swept away, swept in under the carpet, so to speak. I think it's always going to be here. And in fact, Alexander, the way he spoke about his work and what he wants to do with this film is immensely incredible. And it's something that I think as horror fans in general, we should embrace.